All right, hello everybody. Good to have everybody here today. Many of you know me. My name is Chris Kaplinger. I am the President and Chief Strategy Officer at Gimmal. And with me today, I have Patrick Wong, our new Vice President of Product Management. You may have saw earlier this week that Gimmal and ECMWise merged. Patrick was the former CEO of ECMWise, and he's joined our organization. And I'm really thrilled to be introducing him today.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for the introduction. I'm thrilled to be here and providing some talking points today for you guys. And thanks for the intro, Chris.
Awesome. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about today is a little bit about Gimmal and who we are. Most of you know who Gimmal is. We've been around the information governance, ARMA, records management industry for a long time. We've always sort of been known as a records management company. Earlier this year, we decided to make a little switch to our vision because we realized that we're really more than just records management, and we're really a fully featured information governance. And when we think of information governance, the way we look at it here at Gimmal, and it's really weighing the value versus the risk of our information. And when we think of the value of our information, we're thinking of things like the reputation of your firm, operating efficiencies, data quality, the visibility of your data, which becomes very important because if your data is not visible, everybody spends time searching for it. It costs money to find and look for your data every day. On the risk side of things, we have fines, spoliation fines. As you know, you go to do e-discovery, somebody finds out that there's information that's been deleted prematurely. That's never good. Those cause fines. Anymore, especially the last couple of years, we have privacy fines. You know, they could be GDPR came first, really, in the EU, and then followed by that, the next thing we really hear about is what was happening in California with the privacy laws there. And I know New York's working on a new privacy law now. I don't know the exact name of it, but I know they're working on one, and it's probably going to be out pretty soon. And really, that's going to be followed by multiple states having these different privacy rules. So those fines can get expensive and costly. On top of that, we have e-discovery costs. Those are risks for your organizations. And then, you know, maybe one of the worst is exposure. Is we've all seen the things that happen in the news, you know, when it happens to a company, and you may have worked for a company that it happens for, and it's hard to stop it, but when it does, it's sort of devastating for your organization to have that exposure of whether it was a ransomware attack, a hack, or something to those like. So really at Gimmal, we understand that, but we also understand that there has to be value out of the information, so nothing can be locked down totally. We really have to get the value out of our information governance programs. So for those of you who don't know who we are about us, I'm just going to talk real quick about our solution set. And most of you know, and you know, the thing on the lower right there is Gimmal Records Management. That's really our core software and what everybody that knows us probably knows us as. And it's really the records management software and the services that we've always provided around it. But if we go over to the lower left, Gimmal Altitude is a product that we released, I think it was in the spring or early summer, May, June timeframe. And really what it is, it's a file analysis product. It goes in and it looks at your data in almost any repository, starts to tell you what data is at risk, helps you organize the data, helps you mitigate data in a way that we can, you know, quickly move data to other locations, quickly delete data. And the idea that we're doing this is we really do it sort of as a cleanup operation before we start governing in this data and putting it under compliance. You know, a lot of times you're just looking saying, hey, I want to get rid of all stuff on the file share that is absolutely of no value. It's what we know as rot, redundant, obsolete, and trivial information. So Gimmal Altitude is made to help us with that information. Another product we have, a solution we have, is document management for SAP solutions. And this is a product that really works with SAP, and it allows you to take content that's inside of SAP and allows you to store it in SharePoint. And it can be SharePoint Server or SharePoint Online. And it's really nice the way that it works because it doesn't change the SAP interface. So your SAP users, they get to keep using SAP. They don't really understand that the data is stored somewhere else. They can use that data. It pulls it straight out of SharePoint. gives it to those and presents it to those users without them having to go anywhere else. So it really reduces change management because they don't have to do anything different. However, it also helps the users that don't use SAP every day, and now makes that content available to them in SharePoint, makes it available to them in search so they can find it along with the rest of their information. Another product we have is content governance for SharePoint. This product really helps us govern information that's in SharePoint. We have some really neat products on it. One is called Drop Zone that allows you to quickly drop information in and store it in the right place in SharePoint, ensure the right metadata in SharePoint. It works with SharePoint Syntex, the new AI product that you just heard of. You've probably heard about the last couple of weeks from Microsoft, just to really help you get information in and ensure that information's in the right place with the right metadata on it. The next thing is Gimmal Migration. I'm not going to talk about it here today because that's going to be sort of the focus of what we talk about today as we introduce that product. And then, of course, there's Gimmal Records Management, which most of you know us for. And we're really known for really two pieces of that. We have an in-place records management that allows you to manage information regardless of where it's at. It can be in SharePoint, it can be in FileNet, it can be in Documentum and file shares, or almost anywhere. And we can manage that information in place with one single file plan. So with that, and I'd mentioned Gimmal Migration, I'm going to jump over to Gimmal Migration. And before I turn this over to Patrick to start talking more about it, is really just want to talk kind of briefly, on the product and what it is it simplifies migrations from very complex systems. There's one thing to do the easy push button migrations, if you're thinking about cloud to cloud migrations. But, when you're talking about migrating from OpenText content server, those are very complex environment. You're trying to take information there and put it into Microsoft 365. That is a very difficult, it can be very costly to do. If it's from a file share, they're also can be very complex, and getting that information into Microsoft 365 can be difficult. Really what this solution does, and the reason that Gimmal merged with ECMWise on it is because we're so excited about it, is the simplicity that we bring to that process. We can take something that is very, very painful for most people, and a lot of organizations don't even do it because how painful it is, and we simplify that. And with that, I am going to turn over to Patrick, and he is going to dig into this and talk about the solution today. So Patrick,
Thanks,
take it away.
Thanks, Chris. Awesome. Hopefully everyone's having a good day. We're gonna do a little bit of discussion about what Gimmal migration means, could mean for customers like yourselves. Obviously, organizations have struggled with large migrations like this, right? Coming from legacy systems like content server, right? It's not an easy task, right? So the problem I like to describe it as is organizations often are looking to migrate from systems like content server to SharePoint. They're faced with a daunting set of complex tasks, right? So you have basic things like document management that you do. Obviously, if you're doing email integration, maybe you're doing projects, right? You're managing projects within a system like content server, right? Obviously, you're doing collaboration, right? There may be things like records management. You guys know a little bit about that in the room. And then there's also things like application integrations, right? Obviously, oftentimes content server is integrated with third-party applications. How do you deal with that? There's complexities involved, and things like business process automation, right? So business processes in content server, how do you deal with that in SharePoint? So our solution that we bring to the table with Gimmal migration really is the fastest and the most comprehensive way to migrate from legacy systems, or maybe not legacy systems, just different systems, right? Other ECM systems into SharePoint Online M365 in a simple and efficient manner, right? So what we do is we will preserve 100% what we call full fidelity, right? So that means if you're using records management in something like content server, you have records classification codes, you have records dates, you have status dates, right? You have retention schedules. All of that comes across easily. We handle it all for you, right? So that issue of having to bridge that, we will have migration logs that shows a legal chain of custody from point A to point B, what it used to be, what it is now in SharePoint, how it got there, what account was used, right? And kind of tying back to the full fidelity. all your dates, all your user information, all of your metadata, your folder structures if you want them. Some customers take the folder structures, some customers collapse the folder structures, right? We will allow you to bring over what your business wants, right? If a business wants to transform their data as part of that migration, you can transform it. If you're just bringing it over as is, as a lift and shift migration, which reduces some of the change management and differences that you have your business users deal with, the tools could do that as well, right? And really, you install our tools, and within minutes, you're able to start your migration. So really, the value proposition that we're talking about here is that we provide our migration tools, the Gimmal migration tools, the services, right? What we like to talk about is a turnkey migration service, which means if you come to us and there's a migration that you need to have done, we can provide the services as well, right? We have a proven methodology that we've proven out with lots of different customers, and or we can support you in your migrations if you're using our tools. Okay, and our goal here is to make your migrations manageable, fast, effective, and efficient, right? To simplify the complex process, right? All those things I talked about, your document management, your versioning, your metadata, your records management, all the collaboration things that you do, right? Your business processes, we simplify it and we lift and shift if you need it, right? So that's the offering that we'll be talking about today. Obviously, if you guys have questions, I'm assuming there's a mechanism for you guys to submit your questions, and Chris will be trying to answer your questions as we go. Okay, so the problem statement that we're talking about while we jump into the demo in just a minute here is, let's say we're taking the case of customers on content server, right? So let's say a content server 10.5, right? So it's out of support, right? And let's say they want to go to M365, right? So maybe they're using M365 for some portal usage and a little bit of collaboration, but now you want to bring over the rest of your records, right? That's the use case we'll look at. Obviously, file shares are in play as well. Our tools can handle file shares just as we would content server, just as we would something like a Documentum, right? But obviously, the demo that we're going to be looking at is specifically content server. Some of you guys may be using it, some of you may not be, but it's the same concept, whether it's file share, whether it's other legacy systems. So I'm going to share my screen. So awesome. Oh, I got to log in. Great. So I have on my demo system here, and hopefully none of the original, the demo common demo bugs aren't here today, right? So hopefully that's the case. So I'm gonna go to my. Oh, sorry, Chris.
I was like, yeah, no bugs, no issues today.
No bugs, no issues. You know how it goes, right? It's the law of the demo. You always have some strange things happening. Okay, so what we'll want to do today is we're showing you, and I've already queued it up, and I've already done the migration. Right, so obviously, we don't have that much time to show you a full end-to-end. If you want another demo afterwards, we can always schedule something else specific for specific customers. But what we'll show you today is content server is on the right-hand side. Left-hand side is SharePoint. Right, obviously with content server, this is a test environment. So within here, you would have different folders, different metadata, different structures, different use. Right, so right here, common thing you would see is the department level folders within the enterprise. So we would have corporate, finance, engineering, information services, legal. Really what we're going to use as an example today is finance, right? So the first step in our process in our migrations is always to do a discovery, right? So this discovery will tell you more about what you have, right? So let me minimize some of this, and we're going to go right to the discovery. So the first tool I'm going to show you is our discovery tool. So we will actually pull back all the information from your content server environment. So pretty much what I'm showing you here is this enterprise workspace, which is the same thing that you're seeing here. So you see enterprise, you got your contracts, your corporate, your demo. Obviously, we're going to target finance today. Right? So the first step that we always do is do that discovery, right? So what this will do is when I run these reports, it will tell me more about what I have, right? What kind of data, what kind of MIME types? Are they all Word documents? Are they executable files? Are they message files? How much? How frequent? How many versions? What's the total size, right? So it gives you a full breakdown of all that information. It'll tell you things like, are documents reserved by people? When were they reserved? Who has it reserved? right? And you can, kind of going back to your planning, you can go back to those people and say, hey, can you please check in your documents, because you're editing a document, you use Enterprise Connect to edit it, right? But you got to put it back before we do the migration, right? Our tool will tell you what metadata you have, how often it's applied, right? So that's very powerful. When you plan your migration, you got to know what metadata you have in order to plan it out, how it's going to work in SharePoint. We'll tell you about things like, kind of like what Chris was talking about the rot, right? We'll tell you about empty containers. We'll tell you about duplicate documents, right? If you want to have aging, we'll tell you about your aging, right? So tell me stuff that hasn't been modified within 5 years. Tell me stuff that hasn't been viewed within 5 years. If you wanted to be a little bit more aggressive, you can say, tell me stuff that hasn't been viewed in 1 year, right? So some customers will actually say, hey, I only want to migrate my active stuff, right? Most customers will say, bring over everything. Okay, and we'll also generate, as you guys know, in M365, there's certain limitations, certain differences, different versions of SharePoint. If you're going to SharePoint 2016, you're also going to have a different path length, right? We'll actually tell you in advance of actually doing the migration where your long paths will be, right? So obviously within finance, my example here, I do have a couple long paths, right? So if I run this, we'll see that as well. Okay, and then ACL is your permissions. What were your permissions in one point of time, right? Whether you decide to bring your permissions over into SharePoint, we can bring over your permissions from Content Server. If you decide to not bring them over, here is an archive of what your permissions were at that time before you did the migration. Okay, I'm just going to run it real quick. I won't go into full detail on these reports, right? Again, we don't have that much time to go through it because it's an interesting topic to me, but we can always cover that another time. Under a hierarchy report, this will tell you, do I have any deep folder structures? You see here, this folder, where Boston, Massachusetts, Harvard, that folder's too long, right? You're going to have problems with that. So when you plan your migration, you will know in advance, we need to do something about this. You can either turn that back over to your users and say, please clean this up, or our tools will automatically handle it as part of the migration. Okay, so now that we've done our analysis, let's say we did our analysis on finance, we did our analysis on legal, right? We know what the sizes are, right? If I go in here, we'll know what the size is. So this finance area is only 11 megabytes, so it's not that big, right? So it's just a small area to test out. We know they're mostly Word documents. There's no executable files, so that we have a little bit of knowledge. Hey, maybe we don't want to put the executable files in SharePoint. Okay, so moving on to our actual migration tool, right? Obviously, we don't have full time to show you the migration tool, but I'll show you a little bit about it, and then I'll show you the results in SharePoint. Okay, so really what I've done here is I've loaded up one of our tools, and really this tool can be used to load from file shares, from Content Server, from Documentum into SharePoint. Okay, so I've queued up one of these demos, and really what you see here is our migration profiles. And really what migration profiles are is a way for you to keep track of the different migrations you've done, right? So you can say, show me only the profiles that are complete. Show me only the ones that are active, right? Or show me all of them, right? And you can work on these profiles. Let's say I'm doing a migration for accounts payable, right? And I can have another one for accounts receivable, right? And let's say, I just finished accounts payable and I want to copy the profile. I can copy the profile without having to rekey in all the information. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is it's going to log in. It's going to ask me to log into M365, and I'm just going to use the site collection administrator to log in. Oh, I'm already logged in. So I'm logged in. It uses modern authentication, right? The first thing I'm going to do is choose where I'm going in SharePoint. You see I'm going to finance and this migration library, right? So that's the site collection, and this is the library that I'm going to. Obviously, I've already pre-done the migration, so it's already in here, right? And we'll look at that in a second, but I wanted to show you the interface, right? The next step that we would do is we would import the content from Content Server or file shares or Documentum, right? So at this point, every row that you see here represents the documents and folders from Content Server, from Documentum, from file shares. Okay, so right now, if I go into this finance area and we go into financial reporting, this 2014 Q1 results document, right? This 2014 Q1 results document is row 9, right? And we see here the dates, 11/4/2014, 11/4/2014 as the created date and the modified date. Okay, let's look a little bit more at the details right? Obviously, our tools will handle things like long folder paths, automatically correcting invalid characters in file names and folder names, right? So that's all automatic as part of our tool. Okay, when we look at this document, to look at categories, right? There's also metadata applied, right? Obviously, we come back here and you see, hey, there's no metadata applied yet because I jumped ahead to the metadata values. I'll show you actually how to map all that metadata over. Okay, and one of the things to keep in mind is this is all dynamic. You could remove content from your migration from here. You could change content if you needed to, right? Let's say you wanted to inject new values. You can do that all from this interface. Okay, I'm going to go back to metadata values, right? Left-hand side content server, right-hand side SharePoint, right? SharePoint, what we want to do here in our example is we want to map this asset ID and this asset type. And I won't map them all because it's just the same as if I map two of them, right? You can map as many as you like, but what we want to do is map this asset ID and this asset type to a content type in SharePoint, right? A content type with columns, right? So what we see here is it's loaded it from SharePoint, right? And I've already pre-created the columns in SharePoint. We've created an asset info content type, and it's coming in from the content type hub. Okay, so from a metadata perspective, from your data, you want to preserve that data. All I have to do is select this, map it, right? You can globally map it so that if accounts receivable is the same as accounts payable, I only have to map it one time and it's always going to use that mapping. Okay, I map the asset type. Okay, let me switch back to metadata values. You're going to see a little bit of magic happening now. Okay, if I go back to row 9, 2014 Q1 results, you see the value of asset type is vehicle 1, the asset type is truck. That's exactly what we have in content server, right? So if you said as part of the migration, you wanted to transform the data, you wanted truck to become van, I can use this interface to search and replace, and now truck will become van, right? If your managed metadata, your term in SharePoint has changed, you can do that change as part of this migration. Okay, if I go back to the metadata mappings, other things that we can do, let's do something crazy, right? So let's inject metadata that we didn't have in our original system. So let's say we wanted to capture, I know it's not a great example, but let's say we wanted an information classification as a column value, right? Instead of hitting this blue button, I'm going to hit this green button. And what that green button does is says, I'm going to inject that value. Okay, and if I come here now, you'll see information classification is in here. And you see from the interface, I can actually populate everything in my migration will now get an information classification column value, not the security classification, obviously, right, as the value of public. And if I come to this document, I can change this one to private, just this one, right? So you have full control on that. Right? So not only are we pulling back all of the metadata, so if I go back to my metadata mappings, all of the records management metadata is also available, right? So RM classification, we could map that to a content type. You can set the default content type. So if you guys are using GRM, right, you can have an automatic classification rule that says if it's this content type, it's going to be this type of record, right? And because we're maintaining the record date, the status date, all of that stuff comes over automatically, right? Likewise, if you were using just SharePoint out of the box with the O365 security and compliance retention labels, you can also map it there as well. Okay, so pretty powerful, right? And from this point, obviously, you would do your migration. Everything with our migrations are logged. So you will get a validation log, right? So if I come back here and I analyze, so everything is logged. So when I run this analysis and we look at the log file, we will get a log of everything, right? You see here, it's telling us this folder is too long. Migration will fail unless this is fixed. So because it exceeds 400 characters. On the restructuring tab will allow you to fix that automatically. Okay, when we run our migration, you can either schedule it to run off hours or during business hours, right? When our migrations run, we will do 100% validation on your data as well. So because I've already migrated this area, if I click validate, it's going to go check because I've already done that migration already. It's going to go validate. Oh, and look, because I migrated it to a different area earlier, it's telling me, hey, this stuff is missing, right? And you get an error log. So then you go back, you know you can't give this to the user for UAT because, hey, there were errors. You have to fix what was wrong, right? So I just showed that as an example of how that would work. Our tools also migrate the permissions across. So the permissions from content server, if you decide to bring it over like for like, our tools can handle that. One additional thing before we actually look at the data, the resultant data in SharePoint, because we did that migration earlier, is all of your legacy links from Content Server. If they're contained in emails, on intranet pages, within PDF documents, those links represent fabric of the decisions that you've made, the records that you've made, right? Obviously, when you do a migration like that and you turn off Content Server, or Content Server maybe gets moved somewhere else, right? Those links, you can't have them break, right? Our legacy link redirector will maintain all of those links, right? Whether you migrate it to Office 365, SharePoint, whether you migrate it to OneDrive, whether you archive it to Azure storage, whether you bring it over to a file share, those links in an email, in intranet pages from Content Server, when you click on it, it takes you to the new destination, no matter where you go. Okay? So let's actually take a look at the data. What does that data look like after we've done the migration? Okay, we're going to go into finance, and let's go back to that top level. So we have 4 containers: accounting, financial reporting, internal audit, sample audit report. Here is those same 4 containers. Here are our same 3 documents that we had at that top level. Now let's look at the dates real quick, and let me drag this over a little bit. So accounting was modified on 11/28/2017 to 25. Accounting, November 28, 2017. If we look at the properties, it would say the same date and time, right? So from a records perspective, it doesn't say today's date, right? We can't have it say that. It has to be the original date that it's set in Content Server. So once Content Server is decommissioned or turned off, all of your records data, all of your dates, it was as if it was always in SharePoint. Okay. Likewise, if you have audit trail information, we can get your audit trail information as well. It's super powerful. Okay, so we go a little bit deeper, and let's take a look at this document. Let's look at the version history. So this is an interesting point, and I want to point it out to you guys, because if your Azure Active Directory has people who've left the company, right? No matter if the person has left the company. So Connor J is no longer in Azure Active Directory, right? So they've left the company, and we've had to use an actual M365 username, which we've used for ease. You see here, we're still capturing the original username that had created that document, right? And you see, we have 3 versions. We have 3 versions here. If we go look at the metadata, right? Remember, we mapped the asset type over, the asset ID and the asset type. The asset ID, vehicle 1, the asset type of truck, right? You can map as much metadata as you need. If you had 10 categories, you can map all 10 categories. Remember, we injected the information classification of private, and here you go, information classification of private. That information didn't exist in your source system, but we injected it as part of your migration, right? So not only are you bringing over what you had, you're also adding more information. Okay, a little bit more as we go into here as well is we've replaced invalid characters, right? So here's some invalid characters here, and we've replaced it. You have full control of what those invalid character replacements are, right? We have long folder paths. Let's go into here, right? So this was a long folder path in Content Server, right? Lots of customers have this issue, right? We're coming into here. Let's go into Northeast, right? Obviously, in Content Server, it was long. In SharePoint, it's no longer a problem because we shortened one of the paths automatically using our tool, right? So when we come into Harvard, right, we're going to have the same 3 documents. You have your email, you have your document, you have your URL. The same exact 3 documents. This document, was it created by Noah Giustini? Let's take a quick look here. And it was created by Noah Giustini. And here he is. And it was created, it was last modified 10/13, 2020 at 9:12 p.m. Let's go take a quick look at these details on this guy. And let's go a little bit further down. Yeah, modified October 13. Obviously, if we went to classic view, we could get the full date there in the format that we want, but all that information's there, and Noah is the guy who created it. Likewise, let's take a look at one more example. I know we're probably running a little close to time, so I just want to show you one more thing. All of your records information would come over. If I had mapped to a retention label, it would be there, or if I had chosen to map it to a column value, it would be there. Okay, if I go into financial reporting, and what I wanted to show was version tests. Another thing that's important for customers, if you're using things like advanced versioning, right, is that being preserved here, right? So if I go to this is that same document. I go look at the version history, right? There should be 5 versions, right? And here's the 5 versions. And here's, apologies, I ran the wrong demo earlier, but yeah, so depending on the settings that you're using, it would preserve that information. But I used a different demo setting earlier, and I used major version only. So what it did, it replaced the minor version with just major versions. Okay, but you get the drift, right? Usually the advanced versioning would preserve that. If I had chosen the right, actually, sorry, I looked at the wrong document. This is the advanced version. Apologies. I have too many meetings today. This is the right one. Apologies, Chris. So you
Yeah.
see here,
Well, and here we
0.1.
are. It ends up being total user error instead of system error.
Oh
It's
yeah, that's good.
not the normal demo demon.
I prefer it being user error, right?
Me too.
Then people can laugh at me versus laughing at the system, right? So you see here, these match up exactly. 0.1, 0.2, 1.0, 1.1, 2.0. So you get a full fidelity migration. You haven't lost a thing. All your dates, all of your metadata, all your records data if you want it, right? Your status date, your record date, all of your information, right? Is preserved. Your links are redirected, right? If we're doing the migrations for you, we're helping you with your change management. We're helping you with some of your governance, right? End to end, right? We got you covered. Yeah, over to you, Chris. I think I covered what I wanted to cover. Hopefully it was beneficial to see.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's fun, Patrick, to watch it because, we've been working on this for a while, but I still see things every time that's new. So, I'm sitting here going, oh, I forgot about it, does that. So it's pretty neat. But I just want to finish up with a few topics here is that, what's so neat here is, I've been like you, Patrick, I've been involved in migrations for, oh my gosh, forever. I always say, I start talking about my ECM life and I realize that I've been in ECM, more than half my life now. So it's like, I don't know if that ages me or what it does, but it's like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for a long time. And, I started in migrations is how I got going. And so what I realized, back a long time ago was, migrations are difficult and you can't just have turnkey migrations where it's like, oh, I have this one product that migrates everything. It doesn't work in these complex environments. Again, it works for the simple stuff. If I'm just moving Google to Box or, Box to OneDrive, you can do stuff like that. But these ECM systems are complex. You got versioning, you have crazy folder paths, and, there's just a lot that goes on in it. And, one of the things that really impressed, us at Gimmal, about you guys, as we were looking at merging these organizations was, you can not only do this with OpenText content server, but you do with file shares. SharePoint has a really cool and easy file share migrator. It just takes things in a file share and it pushes them over to SharePoint, but it doesn't handle all the crazy things that can happen because there are a lot of crazy things on file servers. You still have long file path situations and, there's just a lot of different things that can happen. And, now you're taking it and you guys have done it with Documentum recently. And made this work with Documentum. And I'm sure we'll be doing more legacy ECM systems in the future. So I think it's really cool to watch it as somebody who's been involved in migrations really, probably for 20 years, to see a tool that was built by people that do it. So yeah, it's super exciting for me. So, thanks for jumping on here. And, again, I can't be more excited about our organizations coming together, which, we announced on, I think, Monday, if you were watching all the press release. So I can't wait to see what we're going to do going forward. So
awesome. I'm looking forward to it too. Exciting times.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, I think I was actually supposed to show this last slide here and I didn't do it. So I probably made a mistake when we were doing that. We were talking probably with nothing showing, but I don't know what happens in that case. But anyway, here's the final slide up here. If you have any questions about the presentation today, feel free to give us a call or hit us up on our email there at info@gimmal.com. If you send them if you didn't get a chance to ask the question during the presentation today, shoot that over to info@gimmal.com and be sure and put in there what a great job Patrick did at the demonstration as well. So thank you very much. I hope you all had a great week at ARMA InfoCon.
Thanks, everyone.